I'd like to make you all aware that this meeting is being live streamed by the Council's YouTube channel. Please ensure that any mobile phones are switched to silent. So welcome to those who are watching at home. I would also like to outline some housekeeping arrangements. If you wish to speak, please do so to myself. To enable your microphone, press the middle button that will turn green, and the microphone will light up red at the top to indicate this has happened. Please press the middle button when you have finished speaking, as it is particularly important that all members use their microphone so that the audio can be picked up through the live stream. In the event of a fire alarm sounding in the middle of a meeting, please stand and follow the meeting administrator to the meeting evacuation point outside the building. Do we have any apologies for absences?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Butler, Jordan, Mockpool, Niche and Slade, and Councillor Wakeford will be late.
Thank you. We will move on to our first item. The first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes for the last meeting. Do we all agree these minutes are a correct record of the meeting from our last meeting? Yes. We will next go to item 2, which is members' interest. Are there any members that wish to declare an interest? I'll start from over here. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. So applications, so 3A and 3D, both of which I participated in the debate at the Town Council's Planning Committee. So I will leave the room for those items.
Thank you. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I have an interest in item C as I am a ward councillor, and also in item B as I'm a member of Huntingdon Town Council, but I haven't taken part in any debate on either of those items.
Thank you very much. Councillor Corney, did I see your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. 3C as it's in my county division.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McAdam.
Thank you, Chair. Item 3B as I'm a member of Huntingdon Town Council but had no part in the decision, and councillor and 3C as that is I'm actually the ward councillor, one of the ward councillors for that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dew.
Right, my one is 3B. I've got a close connection with the applicant, so I should declare that. And I've now discovered that one of the agents here tonight is also a client of mine, so I've got 2 reasons not to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members that have any declarations of interest? No, so we will move on. We will move on to item 3A on our agenda, which is the erection of a solar farm within St Neots, and this will be presented to us by our planning officer, Hannah Gray.
Thank you, Chair. Learning curve there. Good evening, members. So this is an application for the erection of a solar photovoltaic farm with associated substation and other supporting infrastructure. And that includes a battery storage, inverters, transformers, fencing, CCTV, landscaping, and the installation of an underground high voltage cable that will go within the public highway. So the location of this solar farm is at land south of Abbottsley Country Homes on Drawes Lane at Abbottsley. So this slide here on the agenda, it sets the site in context. This slide shows the location of the site, and it demonstrates that it's in the countryside, and the site sits between the area of St Neots and Abbottsley Parish Village. The site has got some constraints, although very limited. There is a listed building at Herdwick Manor, which is there, if members can see where the cursor is, there's a listed building there. And there are also a bridleway that runs through the site down here, and then a public footpath which runs along the northern bit of the site all the way around through there. So here the site is set into context between Huntingdonshire and Bedford Borough Council. As members can see that the site sits in Huntingdonshire District Council, with the cable running all the way up Potters Road, up into St Neots and then round into the connection with the national grid. We've been working with Bedford Borough planners to bring forward a mirror image on their side of the application, as long as with ours here before you today. So here the site sets in contact on the OS map. It sits on a plateau. As you can see from the contour lines here, we've got 50, 55, and then 60 around there. Again, you can see the public footpath and bridleway there, and then the public footpath running around there to the north of the site. This side here is the classification of agricultural land. As members can see, it's a mixture of grade 2, which is the light blue, grade 3A, which is dark green, and 3B, which is light green. In accordance with the agricultural land classification, this site is therefore classed as best and most versatile land, which we refer to as BMV. At pages 14 and 15 of the report, it's concluded that Cambridgeshire has an abundance of BMV. In this context, the site is predominantly grade 3A, and this is a lower value than the average across Cambridgeshire, which has the high percentage of 1 and 2 land. Policy LP10 seeks to avoid the irreversible loss of that BMV land. In this case, the proposal is for a temporary 40-year period, and any hard-standing panels and buildings can be removed and the farming activities can be reinstated. This is the same with the access tracks and fencing. Officers note that the development will not result in an irreversible or permanent loss of the BMV land by virtue of this 40-year time limit and the end-of-life restoration plan, which can be secured by the recommended planning conditions, which are at the back of the presentation. So this site sets the physical development of the whole site. It shows the panels and the equipment. As part of the site is the access. So access, members will note, is up here on Potton Road. So it uses the existing access that leads to the old golf club, and very shortly into that existing access and driveway, the new access is taken into the field. So the access to the solar farm does not use hardly any of the existing hardstanding and track into and drive into the old golf club. It comes straight away off. So there'll be a new access track that will be hardstanding, hard crushed concrete, and it'll be 3.5 meters wide. So members will note as well that the plan shows the panels, and there are 2 different colours of panels. So the dark blue panels there, they are they're going to be comprised of a no-dig zone. So there'll be no concrete, they'll be on rafters, and that is for to retain archaeological interest in that area. So the sort of the mid-blue panels, they will be sunk into the ground and used as in the sort of more formal manner. So the plan also shows the location of the equipment needed for the development, and this includes 20 plus inverter stations, 4 battery storage containers, 1 switchgear inverter and a substation. I don't know if members can see, this is the main compound here, and in that will sit the substation, the batteries, the switchgear inverters. The inverter stations, they sit outside of that, and they are sporadically dotted around the sites. There's some up here. There's a group of 4 here, and there's some more further down here off near the access tracks. So within the site, there are a small number of tracks also. They'll be laid to create an access to the panels for maintenance and upkeep. Members will also note the ecological elements shown on this site. We also acknowledge the comments from the Abbottsley Parish Council whereby they consider that the proposal will have a negative impact on wildlife. But at page 19 of the report, we note that the Wildlife Trust has been consulted and thoroughly assessed all of the ecological reports and mitigation that have been submitted. They conclude that the development will not damage the existing ecological habitats, which are namely bats, badgers and birds. And they also conclude that using the standard matrix, the proposal will also provide a net increase in biodiversity. The provision for further protection and mitigation of newts and skylarks is also required. And that detail is required as part of a planning condition as set out on page 25 of the agenda. And members will note that there is a reserved skylark area on this plan, and that is hatched in light blue, and that is this area up here. That area land there is reserved. So moving now forward to the physical buildings and panels on the site. The panels are to be 3 metres in height, and they're set at a gradient of 29 degrees, and this is the best gradient to capture the solar arrays. The panels will be laid out in rows, and approximately 5 panels bolted together will form a section, and that section measures approximately 12 metres by 5 metres, and they can be seen there. This slide shows the elevations and the design of the inverter buildings, and also the substation. These buildings are located in the compound area in the centre of the development. This slide shows the battery storage areas. They look very much like lorry shipping containers. So moving on to this next slide. This shows the proposed landscaping strategy for the site. The area, the area already contains well-established vegetation in the form of hedging, small areas of woodlands, clumps of trees. All these will be retained and enhanced. There will be formal and detailed plans to be submitted, and they will be recommended to be secured by planning condition. A few photographs of site. This is viewpoint 1. This is looking south, and it's looking into the application site. That's taken from the public footpath, which is up there. Yeah, members can see my cursor just moving there. Viewpoint 2. This is taken from this area here. So that's looking west into the site, and members can see this is the area of Hardwick, the listed building Hardwick Manor, and the site is behind these established vegetation here. And finally, viewpoint 3. This is standing down here on Drawers Lane, looking north into the site. And the site is here behind the power cables and this hedgerow. And here are the recommended planning conditions. So to summarise, the application process has taken into account all of the material considerations, and the proposed development is considered to be in line with national and local plan policy, and is therefore considered acceptable. The report recommends approval for full planning permission, subject to the noted planning conditions outlined into the report here. Many thanks, Chair. If there are any questions or points of clarification.
Thank you very much. Before we have points of clarification for our planning officer, we'll have our speakers. We have one speaker on this particular application, which is the applicant, Samuel Dix. If you would like to come and join us. Welcome. You have 3 minutes in which to address the committee. And when you're ready, if you just press the middle button.
Okay, hopefully that's all right. Good evening, councillors. My name is Samuel Dix, and I'm a planning manager from a company called Low Carbon. We are the applicant. Firstly, I'd like to thank your officers for their diligent work in bringing our application to the committee with a recommendation for approval. They've been excellent to work with, and I credit to the council. You have before you an opportunity to secure clean renewable energy for the local area from a development that has attracted not a single objection from a member of the public. This is virtually unheard of across our portfolio, at least, and we believe is testament to the well-designed nature of the proposal. Pear Tree Solar Farm, as we refer to the development, will generate enough electricity to power around 16,000 homes and enhance biodiversity on land that is currently farmed in a monocultural arable rotation. We do recognise that a large part of the site is of good agricultural quality, but the same can be said for a great many places in Cambridgeshire, and this land in particular is by no means the best, being mostly grades 3A and 3B, not grade 1 and very little grade 2. The important thing to bear in mind is that not all land is equal when it comes to access to the grid. We have secured a grid connection for this project, which is becoming an increasingly rare occurrence nationally. As such, every opportunity should be taken to deliver renewables where they can be sited and connected in a sensitive manner, such as here. The land is not farmed as an integral part of the agricultural business it is associated with. We provided a circumstances report that explains how the solar farm will provide a guaranteed income for the landowner that they can use to invest in the rest of the farm or provide security during times when the crop yields might be lower. Therefore, rather than harming local agriculture, the solar farm will help to ensure the long-term vitality of a local farming business. The need to decarbonise the energy sector is becoming increasingly stark. In February 2023, your council recognised a climate crisis and ecology emergency in Huntingdonshire. That simply cannot be addressed without bringing new renewable energy projects online. That can be done in this location without harming the landscape, heritage assets, ecology, or any other sensitive constraint. Low Carbon prides itself on being a considerate and responsible developer, and we take seriously our duty to minimise disruption during construction of our solar farms and their connecting cables. We'll therefore continue to work closely with both Huntingdonshire, Bedford Borough, as well as National Highways and East West Rail, as required by the conditions that are included in the recommendation before you. The climate emergency requires urgent action to meet the UK's legally binding goals. By approving this application, which, as per the officer's report, accords with all the key local and national policies, you will help to ensure that action is indeed taken. I therefore respectfully urge you to follow the recommendation before you. I hopefully got a little bit of time just to very quickly clarify something your officer just mentioned in terms of the archaeology on the site. We've worked really, really hard with your archaeological advisors. The only sort of concrete that is used is actually in the no dig areas. The vast majority of the site is piled with piles into the ground. It's actually the darker areas on the plan where ballast has to be used instead. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to clarify that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So do we have any questions for this particular speaker? Councillor Tevlin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. I've got two points. One, you said that you've done engagement and no objections from residents. Can I just understand the level of engagement that has been done here? So that's my first point. And then my second point is CPRE have said that at least 81% of the site is grade 3A and that it is most versatile land and advises to move away from this. So have you also looked at other sites that might be more appropriate using poorer land than high quality agricultural land? Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the engagement point, we held an event in Abbottsley prior to submitting the application. It feels like quite a long time ago now, probably about 18 months or so. A fair attendance at that, it's fair to say. So of the nearest residences, I think it's Abbottsley Country Homes, had quite a few of those people come along, spoke with them all individually, offered them various assurances and specific solutions to their particular concerns. From that, we collected contact information for people and have sent out periodic updates on a mailing list. It's a little bit of a give and receive situation. If we're not getting much feedback on the application, there's little to actually respond to. But prior to making the application, we did undertake that engagement locally via an event in Abersley Village Hall. On the BMV point, we do, within our planning statement, we had an alternative site assessment that explains the sort of process we go through, whereby we've got this point of connection at the Little Barford substation. Realistically, there's only a certain radius from that the site can be developed. And as part of that exercise, we sought to demonstrate, and indeed did demonstrate, that there's very little other land that's of a lesser quality. Nevertheless, we will have written to everybody in the local area with an appropriate site for development, and this is the interested landowner that we received. So it is a combination of the grid and the land that allows us to bring this site forward, and we have looked at alternatives.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Councillor Clark.
Yes, thank you. You're going to connect to Little Barford Power Station. Can you tell the committee how far that is from the site?
As crow flies, or along the road? Along the road, I think it's is it 3 kilometres? I'm afraid I don't have the exact figure to hand at the moment, but it'll be in that sort of region.
You're aware that what it does to the people digging up the road all the way through. We've had this at Upwood coming into Ramsey, and it's a nightmare. You've taken that into consideration, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we're well versed for, and I think it's fair to say that's why you've got a construction management plan as a suggested condition. Typically, we do install cables quicker than people might fear. That would only be, sort of 6 weeks disruption, something like that. So, over the course of a 40-year period, put it in that context, it's relatively minimal. Do take that on board. I should explain, we're an end-to-end developer, so we find the sites, we build the sites, and then we operate the sites. So we have an ongoing involvement in that construction process, and we've got a stakeholder team who will happily respond to anybody who's got concerns, and indeed they're doing that on sites we're currently building.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Tevlin.
Thank you. So my next question is just how much output? It's quite a big site. So how much output is going to be created from this, if you're aware of the facts and figures? And yeah, it's, as I say, it's a big site. Was there any looking at it being a potentially smaller version of the site with the amount of output? So it'd be good to get the figures. Thank you.
So the site's been put forward as a 49.9 megawatt project. That's deliberate, because otherwise it becomes nationally significant. We prefer to deal with it locally through yourselves. There's a degree of optimization that will go into the final design process. So it may well be that there's perhaps too much land here, and we actually end up building a smaller proportion of it. So really, it's about trying to secure the land that's most suitable, and then working within that overall envelope. So, as I say, it comes down to the optimization of the final design. It might be that in this particular location, it's better to space the panels further apart to get better light at the start and end of the day, or you can squeeze them in a little bit more and actually make it a little bit smaller. So there's an envelope there within which we're working within, I suppose, is the message.
Could I just step in? I'd just like to point out to councillors that we need to be asking questions of clarification, and actually that we're looking at this particular site, not at other sites. So in that case, are there any other questions that are questions of clarification on what the speaker has spoken about? No, so we will go on to our questions of clarification for our planning officer. Thank you very much for addressing us this evening. Councillor Gawson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. I know you touched on it in your presentation. At 5.13, the British Horse Society were talking about the bridleway and they have concerns about that. And the only thing I can see is the public rights of way. Are we talking about one and the same? The public rights of way is a footpath, and the bridle way, are they two different things or one and the same? Thank you.
I've got a plan, hang on. I think this might show it more clearly than the OS plan. So there is a public right-of-way and a bridle way. So the public right-of-way goes from along the existing track into the old, which comes all the way along the northern point here. So that's a public footpath. It goes across here and then exits out up there. Then we have got a bridle way that runs from north. Oh, she says losing her cursor. Up here. And that runs through this easement area down here and then out through the bottom to the south there. So yes, the British Horse Society have commented on that because there's a bridle way that runs north to south through that easement area there. So that easement area there, I know it doesn't show it very clearly on that. So that's 10 metres wide.
No, thank you. I was just looking for clarification on that because it wasn't in the recommended conditions. So,
Thank you. Councillor Sanderson, you had a question of clarification.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it is. And good evening, Hannah. Thank you very much for your report and presentation. I know this was asked of the agent just now, but I just wanted to pick up on that 5.17 paragraph. CPRE have an objection here. And they're saying 81% of the site is grade 3 and above. So I just wondered, is that accurate? And what sort of weight should we give to that in determining a decision on this?
Yeah, that is from the applicant's agricultural land classification report as well. They say that there's in terms of percentage, there's 1% of grade 2, there's 19% of 3B, and then there's 80% of 3A. So that then transfers into the coloured plan there. In terms of best and most versatile land, that is classed as grades 1, 2 and 3A, of which this site has a lot of 3A. In terms of the land in Cambridgeshire and obviously in Huntingdonshire District Council itself as well, there's a lot of grade 1 and 2 agricultural land. And as the applicant has stated as well, in terms of this area and the grid connection, there's a lot of 1 and 2 and 3A land. So development will take account of best and most versatile as well. So yes, it is best and most versatile.
But I guess also what you're saying though is that the higher quality of land is actually the percentage of that is actually a lot less, isn't it? So 1 and 2 is actually relatively small. It's the less good quality, perhaps it's the higher.
Yeah. And in terms of our local plan policy as well, it talks about the loss, the irreversible loss of that land. And in this instance, what we're concluding is that it's not an irreversible loss of that land. It can be reinstated back to farming activities at the end of the application process, applicant's process.
That's great. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions of clarification? Councillor Tevlin.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you. Just on the irreversible loss and that it can be rectified, do you know the length of time, how many years and decades it might take to get back to agricultural land if it was in place? Thank you.
So in terms of looking at the development area itself, the permanent structures going onto the land, sort of the tracks, any concrete hard standing, that could, the panels themselves are mounted on pilings. So in terms of the physical structures, those can be removed fairly swiftly, fairly uninvasively, and taken away from site. The development itself is the planning approval is for 40 years, so it would be there for 40 years. In terms of the decommissioning, that would be part of the planning condition details to be submitted to us as the end of life, how long to take it out and how long that would take. But in terms of the physical structures there aren't many physical ground impacting or sort of agricultural land impacting hard standings to be removed in terms of the vastness of the site.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions of clarification from our councillors? There are no other questions of clarification, so we will move on to the discussion. Who would like to start our discussion this evening? Councillor Goulson, thank you very much.
As Doug would say, someone's got to. So on this, I've had a look through, and yes, the only thing I could pull up was get clarification on the bridleway and the footpath. It is something, 40 years is a long time, but in some respect, rested land is actually putting goodness back into the ground, and hopefully they'll just manage underneath, whether they'll have sheep or anything else like that, or just cut the grass, I don't know. But this is out of the way. There is another smaller solar farm just above Abbottsley there as well, so far above. Whilst it does seem a massive land tract, and I'll say I don't like them, it's well positioned, and also you've got to have something that is going to produce this amount of kilowatt. You've got to have close proximity to a power station, otherwise all the gains you lose in the distance travel to the power station. So I'll listen to the rest of the debate, but I'm for this one at the moment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Goulson. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Goulson, I see no reason to decline this. In fact, I think it's, if you look at paragraph 7.8, the MPPF, there's some clear reasons there for approving measures such as this, application such as this. We've clarified the issue about land, the bridle path, etc. So I think it's a very clear report. And I think the questions of clarification have been dealt with well. So I'm happy to propose approval of this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. I will accept that proposal of approval. Is there anyone else that would like to contribute to the discussion? Councillor Dew.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I tend to agree with what our colleagues have said there. I mean, I'm completely reverse to the permanent loss of the land, but when it's constructed as it is for a 40-year temporary permission, one of the things I'm encouraged with, the early ones of these we saw, we gave temporary permissions, but no decommissioning plans were necessarily built in. And I think one of the first things we look at now is how does it go afterwards? So I've got a certain comfort that there is at least a plan in place to deal with that. And having seen recently how some quite large former developments have been removed off the face of the earth, Alconbury Airfield's a good example. If you go up there, huge structures have been removed, and where I was today, I was listening to in an area that's been left there green that used to be in and around the hard standings. You could hear all the ground birds working away, getting ready for spring. So it's, the biodiversity does come out of it as well. So there's a bit of a win-win. I think, as was said by Councillor Goulson, resting the land does it no harm. And we have had a habit in this country, farmland is important and highly useful, but we've had a thing for a number of years with dumping as many fertilisers as we can on the ground, and as many weed killers and whatever else. So we're in danger of turning in certain parts into the Gobi Desert. So something that actually rests what we've got, I think, is a really good idea. And also, has been mentioned, because the areas often go, I was on near one the other day, which had been laid to grass, and there was sheep and all all sorts on there as well, so that it's not as though it's lost to agriculture altogether. It's just being used for alternative use. So I think in view of the fact that all the bits and pieces have been taken into account regarding the planning of it, the removal of it, the actual build structure, as Councillor Clark's question drew out, the actual build time out of a 40-year period is next to zero, and there's a management plan to deal with that as well. I don't see any great problems with it, so I'm quite happy to second Councillor Sanderson's proposal if you'll take it.
I will take that.
You're very kind.
Are there any other councillors that wish to contribute to the discussion? In that case, we will move to a vote, as we've had Councillor Sanderson suggest approval, and Councillor Dew has seconded that. So for all of those that wish to approve, subject to the conditions, please can you raise your hand?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Any against? Any abstentions? Therefore, it has been approved. Thank you very much. I'd just like to say thank you very much to our planning officer for your report. Thank you. We will move on to item 3B on our agenda, as our planning officers just get settled. So the third item on our agenda is an outline with all matters except access for erection of 25 to 30 dwellings within Huntingdon, and this will be presented to us by our planning officer, Lucy Bateman, when she is ready.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So this application has been referred to committee as the officer recommendation of approval is contrary to the Town Council recommendation. This is an outline application with all matters reserved except access for 25 to 30 dwellings on land northeast of 2 Old Houghton Road and southeast of Main Street, Hertford. So you'll see on the submitted location plan, the application site is outlined in red and land within the applicant's ownership is outlined in blue, and I'll come on to this later in the report. The site comprises an area of approximately 1.2 hectares of paddock land fronting the southwest of Main Street. As you can see, it's enclosed by built development on 3 sides. To the northwest, on the north side of Main Street, is the Alway Residential Estate. To the southwest is number 2 Old Houghton Road, where planning permission exists for 3 properties, and there's an extract of that approved plan on the screen there. And the former training centre and industrial buildings to the south of the site. As you'll see from the purple hatch line here, the site is adjacent to the boundary of the Hertford Conservation Area. And just out, not in view on this plan, but there's a listed building, grade 2, which is over 150 metres from the site. So the site falls within flood zone 2, as you'll see here. However, the site and the land outlined in blue on the earlier location plan, which is within the same ownership, have planning permission, which is extant for engineering works to improve drainage and ground conditions. And I'll discuss this in greater detail later in the presentation. So we have the indicative master plan layout here. So the application, just to remind you, is for outline consent with matters relating to appearance, landscape and layout and scale being reserved. The proposal as submitted is for between 25 and 30 dwellings, of which 40% would be affordable housing. The indicative master plan shown here demonstrates how development could be accommodated within the site. This represents a density of 21 to 25 dwellings per hectare, which is appropriate having regard to the location of the site and the character of the surrounding area. I'll now take you through some site photos. So this is a view looking southeast. You'll see the former training centre and industrial buildings in the background. And this is taken from the other side of Main Street towards the roundabout. This is the view from the Alway Junction towards the site. This is roughly showing the approximate location of the proposed access and the pedestrian refuge crossing point, which is proposed as part of this application. View looking southwest on Main Street. So this is roughly the location where the proposed footpath will link up to the existing footpath on that Alway Junction. And here you can see the existing bus stops on both sides of the road, which the pedestrian footpath will link up to. And just another view of the bus stop on the south side of Main Street, looking northeast towards the site. So as I said earlier, access is a matter for consideration at this stage. So we have here the proposed access arrangements and pedestrian improvements. Members should note that concerns have been raised by the Town Council and residents in relation to highway safety. The applicant has carried out a stage 1 road safety audit, which has been reviewed by the Highway Authority. The Highway Authority have advised that the proposed traffic movements from the development are not considered to be significant in relation to existing background traffic flows. At peak traffic times, traffic entering and leaving the site would gap accept like other junctions in the surrounding area. Just going into a bit more detail on the off-site highway improvement works. So the proposal includes a new pedestrian refuge island, as you can see in that red circle. And then a 2-metre wide footway connection on the other side of Main Street with tactile paving either side of the crossing. Pedestrians would utilise the existing pedestrian crossing to access the bus stop on the southern side of the road. The scale of development proposed does not warrant any further highway improvement works, such as a controlled crossing above what is proposed on this application. It's considered that a safe means of access can be achieved for the development, and the traffic generated by the proposal would not have severe impact on the highway safety network. Members should note that we did receive a further representation from a neighbouring property today with raising concerns in relation to visibility displays and speeds on the road. Officers have responded directly to that neighbour with the assistance from the Highway Authority, and we do have Robin Hobbs from the Highway Authority virtually with us today to answer any questions that members might have. So moving on to flood risk and drainage, the Town Council raised concerns. The applicant, you should note that the applicant obtained planning permission in May 2023 for engineering works, a scheme that will achieve a managed surface water drainage arrangement, whereby surface water storage will be formalised into a single area of flooding, shown in the light blue on the plan on the left. The applicant also included ground raising over most of the land that will result in the application area being lifted by approximately 0.40 metres to essentially bring the land into flood zone 1. The approved flood compensation area is shown is within the blue line land on the location plan, so that's within the applicant's ownership and control. A Grampian condition is recommended to ensure the approved drainage engineering works that have already been approved under a separate application are implemented fully prior to the commencement of the proposed development. The Environment Agency has removed their initial objection, as the previously approved ground raising and flood compensation has been demonstrated to reduce the risk of flooding to the northern land parcel without increasing the risk of flooding elsewhere. A management scheme and a maintenance plan has been submitted, which includes arrangements for a management company to maintain the drainage scheme. Both documents are recommended to be secured by condition. The local lead flood authority have raised no objection in principle, and a condition is recommended to secure the finer detail, the surface water drainage design on site. And members will note the representation from Anglian Water, which was included in the late reps report. They've raised an objection due to the intended connection to the public foul drainage network. The site is located within the catchment of the Huntingdon Water Recycling Centre, which Anglian Water has stated currently lacks capacity to accommodate the additional flows that would be generated by the development. Members should note that other applications within the same catchment have received similar objections recently, and it's likely that we'll see similar objections on applications going forward. This is a strategic issue for Anglian Water to resolve in terms of their business plan and allocating funding, and it's not for this application to resolve this issue. Officers are recommending that a condition be imposed to secure a foul water drainage scheme as requested by Anglian Water in their full response. So to summarise, the officer recommendation is for approval, subject to the prior completion of a Section 106 agreement relating to affordable housing, provision of open space and wheeled bins, and that is subject to the conditions listed here and at the end of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. We will move on to our speakers for this particular application. Our first speaker is Councillor David Cole, who is from Huntingdon Town Council, and I believe we have him online. We can't quite see you yet. Just waiting for you to come up on the screen. So welcome, and you have 3 minutes in which to address the committee. Yeah, when you're ready, please do get started. Thank you.
Unavoidably, I have to be elsewhere. Huntingdon Town Council objected to this proposal on 2 grounds, access and flooding, when we discussed it on the 21st of September 2023. I'll deal with access first, if I may, because this is all matters reserved except as access. So we do need to get that right here and now. We do welcome things like the footway connection and the pedestrian island. But the core issue here that we're looking at is that you're building an access to a residential area onto Main Street near where the speed changes from 40 to 50, or if you're going the other way from 50 to 40. Turning into or out of Alway is already challenging. Traffic there already backs up. Highways originally asked for a stage 1 safety audit before and asked DMC to wait until that was done. That audit has been done, but it says there haven't been there was no significant vehicle accidents there. It doesn't seem to have picked up, for instance, that the bus shelter near the end of Alway was taken out completely in a road traffic accident. The safety audit says that the 100 metres available is sufficient visibility, given that the 85th percentile on Main Street for speed is 38.2 miles an hour. We would just point out that means that 15% of traffic is going faster than that. We also know that that at some times of day, on that report, the 85th percentile is actually faster than 40 miles an hour. So we think there's an issue there around visibility, and we also think that means that the various splays where it's coming on may also be insufficient. We think that may be sufficient grounds to refuse anyway, but if not, if there could be conditions on works being made to make sure that visibility and splays are adequate, given that people are doing, given that the 85th percentile overall means there are times when people are doing significant amount of traffic is going faster than that. The other issue is flooding. And we note that the updated opinion from the county councillors, the LLFA, that came out on the 16th of December 2024, which sets no objection in principle, but sets out a number of conditions. And we would ask that those conditions be imposed. As much as anything, there's a lot of concern about flooding there. And we particularly ask that attention be given to the potential for flooding or worsening flooding in nearby areas, and that care is taken given that this is the Ouse Valley Way, it's right next to the Ouse and so on. I would just add one final point. This is flood zone 3. Climate change is happening. And we really do think this is asking for trouble. And we would ask you to very seriously consider whether this is an appropriate place to be putting in any houses. We do recognise that the developer is looking at affordable housing and so on, and that's grand. But we don't think this is the right place. We think there are other places in Huntingdon, in and near Huntingdon, which we have supported that would be better. So on the basis of access and flooding, we believe that DMC should decline, or if not, condition it extensively. Thank you for time and attention.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cole. We will move on to questions for our speaker. Are there any questions of clarification for this particular speaker? We have no... Oh, yes, we do. Councillor Pitt has a question of clarification for you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Cole. Can I just check, did your committee consider this application any further since the updated information from the Leeds Flooding Authority came through?
No.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions of clarification? There are no other questions, so thank you for coming and addressing the committee tonight. We will now move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Simon Tyndall, who is the agent for this particular application. So welcome. And when you are ready, you have 3 minutes in which to address the councillors here. And when you're ready, you just press the middle button.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. My name is Simon Tyndall from Brown & Co, and I'm a chartered town planner, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant. Thank you to your officers for a well-considered report and recommendation of approval. I think I'd like to just address some of the points really raised by the Town Council, and I think those have been satisfied or certainly can be satisfied by the imposition of condition in matters of highway matters. Firstly, as we heard from the Town Council, a stage 1 safety audit has been undertaken, and the local highway authority were entirely happy with that. The local highway authority have agreed to the visibility and to the displays, and they consider those proportionate for the speed limit that is enforced along that road. Moving on to flood risk, there is a maintenance scheme which is included with the application, which officers have had been able to review, and the local lead flood authority have been able to review as well. This will be divested into a management company in the future, so that will be managed and maintained in perpetuity, and conditions will secure that. And just a point raised by the Town Council in terms of climate change, when calculating, when the site-specific flood risk assessment has been undertaken, part of the calculation does account for climate change. And this has been fully assessed by officers and the LLFA in their consideration. So thank you for that, Chair, and I'm available for any questions that members might have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of clarification? Councillor McAdam.
Thank you. I think one of the main concerns is to do with flooding. And from the report, it's clear that you're putting in a lot of mitigating works there to solve the problem. But how confident are you that these would work well, considering the very, I'm trying to find the right word, bad or levels of storms we've been having? You know, we've been having flooding, goodness knows what, and it seems to be becoming more frequent. So I'm just wondering how confident you are that will be able to cope. Thank you.
Well, I think as well as ourselves being confident, and you know the applicant's drainage consultant's been confident, we have to get the confidence of the local Lead Flood Authority and officers, and you know I believe your officers are confident that the management plan and the maintenance plan can be secured in perpetuity and will do the job that it's set out to do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of clarification? Councillor Gorson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking for a bit further clarification on the obligations to maintain the site going forward in perpetuity to avoid any further flood risk for any people, because at the end of the day, the Environment Agency do say at 7.24 that they have concerns over the long-term availability to sustain this. But I just want to hear the confidence you've gotten. Who will be picking up the tab? Will it be the landowners themselves, that are, i.e. the people that buy? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Essentially, will be divested into a management company, and fundamentally the management company will be run by the residents who live there. So it will be the management company that will be subject to that.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions of clarification for this particular speaker? Councillor Clark.
Yes. Following on from that, has there been any estimations on what it will cost in the future to maintain this? I.e. like similar to drainage boards, and ongoing the costs get higher and higher. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If I can, yes, there has been an estimation of costs for that, and that was submitted to officers along with the maintenance estimation of that. It comes in around £300 per dwelling per annum. That was the cost to the end purchaser.
Thank you very much.
I mean, yeah, sorry, thank you.
Are there any other questions of clarification for this particular speaker? There are no more questions. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. So we will move on to questions of clarification for our planning officer. And also we have someone from Highways here as well. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. We've obviously had a late representation from Anglian Water. They're not the Lead Flood Authority, though, it's the County Council. But they do seem quite firm in their objection to that. And I know Lucy in the presentation said that it's really for them to manage that situation. So I'm just wondering how much weight should we give to their objection? My second question is on the highway obligations. I think it's good that we see the Crossing Island proposed the footpath. Is that through the Grampian condition, or is that through a 6, and I'm guessing county would have recommended that as part of their consultation.
Okay, we'll bring in our Chief Planning Officer.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. For the avoidance of doubt, obviously you've seen the Anglian Water response. Crucially, their objection is based on their financial plan rather than an objection that in principle against the development. So with that in mind, it's just a reminder that we're here tonight to look at this from a land use planning perspective. And ultimately, that's a matter for Anglian Water to remedy in terms of their funding plan for future years. And within their comments, you can see that they do go on to also recommend a condition. So to your substantive point, how much weight do you put on the fact that they object? I would suggest limited weight, given that the rationale behind their objection is financially motivated rather than a future capacity ability.
Thank you. And then just to answer the second point around the off-site highway improvement works. So they'll be secured by condition. So it'll be prior to occupation of any dwellings. Those works will need to have been carried out. And they'll also need to go through a separate Section 278 application with the Highway Authority.
Thank you. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 5.6, the urban design officer has strongly recommended development is limited to 25 dwellings. Now, so there's quite a few paragraphs regarding the indicative layout that kind of, because obviously it's an outline planning application, a lot of things are reserved, but it's kind of sort of going into the what ifs of when those further development, plans come forward. And the nudges that I feel the applicant is getting is that it may be, too many dwellings to fit onto that site in order to fit in with the appropriate planning legislation. Can you give us any advice on, because also I noticed that I don't think there's a condition regarding the number of properties other than as the applicant has proposed. Is there any scope for us to limit the number of properties in this application currently?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. So I think in terms of density and the impact on the carotid area, density is considered to be acceptable in terms of 25 to 30 dwellings. I think in regards to this application, because all matters are reserved apart from access, at this point, the layout is just indicative. So we're just looking at the access and the red line, so that's the location, the use and the quantum of development. I think the key point here is that obviously the design comments are helpful and they will help kind of inform a reserved matters application, but those other matters aren't in front of us tonight. So I think the officer report just highlights that there's a number of constraints on the site, such as noise, tree protection areas, the drainage works, and there's also certain requirements such as open space, but those matters are for reserved matters. So I think officers are confident that the site can accommodate 25 to 30 dwellings. The exact number is to be left at detailed design stage.
Thank you. Councillor McAdam.
Thank you, Chair. 5.7, it talks about the medieval earthworks and their loss. In one part it says that they have added significance and their loss will be harmful. The loss, but it says the loss would not be substantial. I seem to remember reading elsewhere in the report, it talks about the loss being harmful. Two things really. One, I'm just curious as to where these earthworks actually are on the site, if that could be pointed out. And the other thing is any comment you would have on this, because I do, when we're losing heritage assets, I find that a little bit concerning. So I'd just like to know how that's being mitigated. Thank you.
So be helpful if we just shared the presentation. I think in terms of if you can see it, so you can see the ridge and furrow if you look for it. But I think the point of that, most of the views into this site are quite transient. So we're moving along the roads into it. It's also just noting that the site itself is not within the conservation area. It's not within a setting of a listed building. It's not ancient scheduled monument. So it has no protection in terms of that. Why is regrettable that those kind of aspects will be lost? I think it's just understanding where you see that in the context of the site. Obviously, the conservation officer knows what they're looking for in terms of that. And I think it's clear that they're not objecting to the scheme. They've identified harm and left up to officers to make that assessment. But yeah, it's not a protected heritage asset. And I think that's the main point here. So yeah, while it's regrettable, it's just that we haven't got any long distance views in or out the site in relation to that conservation area. So it's understand the significance of that ridge and furrow against the nearby heritage assets. And there's not a real connection in terms of visual. So yeah, but if you just go to the photos, Lucy, it's probably the one looking straight into the site. It'd be most helpful. So you can see there, and if you look very closely, you can see it. But like I say, this view is very transient. The conservation officer knows what they're looking for. There are many fields in Huntingdonshire that have these kind of historic features to them. But the ones that we seek to protect are normally within the setting of a listed building, conservation area, or as an ancient scheduled monument. This doesn't have any of those protections.
Thank you. And we have a question from Councillor Brereton.
Thank you, Chair. Are the officers happy with this 400 lifting of the ground level? And on that 400 that also include the roads that go in and out, or are the roads staying at original level? And where will the water go from this 400 high infill when it reaches the roads? Thank you.
So we'll just move to the relevant slide. So here you go. So I think in terms of officers being happy with it, it already has planning permission to carry out these drainage works. So the applicant's gone away, achieved planning permission, and that's the main reason for that, is to bring the site into flood zone 1, so to make the principle of development acceptable. That's not saying that this is the only drainage strategy for the site. There's a SUDS condition recommended by the lead local flood authority. So as part of their detailed design at reserve matter stage, they'll have to come up with that detailed scheme, and that will still be submitted for assessment by the lead local flood authority. So I think kind of one of the best ways to explain it is directed flooding. So the red area, the increase of the land brings in flood zone 1, but you've got an attenuation area to the south. So it's not just displacement, it's a focused displacement. In terms of, so you can see the red where it's raised, so the access itself is not being raised. But this is what I think is made in reference by the design officer, that the detailed stage of reserve matters, that these competing factors and requirements and constraints will have to be balanced up for the design. So in terms of are we happy with it, is your question. The main thing we look at is the lead local flood authority and the EA. Both are happy. Obviously, the EA posed a question to us around sustainability of that going forward, and it's those conditions around the management company and maintenance plan that secures it and gives officers the confidence that it's an acceptable solution. It's also within the blue line, so it's demonstrated that it's got ownership, and we'll put the Grampian condition on to make sure that those works are carried out prior to commencement.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Corney.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to follow on from that a little bit, actually. I don't know, this is going to come back on the reserve matters, but just the area that's been proposed where they can take the water, will that be considered as the open space at a later date, or the green space, was that kept within the development area itself?
So no, just to be clear, so the site that you're looking at in this application is the red line. That blue land there is for information, but relates to that previous consent, which is the drainage strategy to bring it into flood zone 1. in terms of the open space, it'll be within the red line area. And I think that just goes back to that point again around the design about the requirements for the site. Open space is secured via the Section 106 agreement, but no, within the red line. So this scheme is red line. It just is making use of that land within the blue to sort the drainage in terms of bringing it into flood zone 1.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of clarification? There are no other questions of clarification. So in that case, we will move on to the discussion. Who would like to start the discussion on this particular application? Councillor Corney.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's my question is, we just tease something out for later on, I know, but there's a lot of work to come back on this, on the reserve matters. I mean, obviously, there's a principle and it's the access. When I first started reading the papers, I actually thought that knowing the road very well, like I do, I was sort of thinking another access in there, traffic coming off of the roundabout, at times at speed. He's sort of concerned about the visibility, but then you read into it. We haven't gone to Robin this evening, but the audit's being done. We have to take, we have to take heart in that and trust that. I think there's a lot to do on this as it comes forward, but in the principle of it, I struggle to find anything to say, to go against on this. I guess the only one thing I will say is I do wonder, and it's not a question, I didn't want to bring it up, but it's with the and it's a separate application anyway, but raising the levels, whether that sets a precedent elsewhere as we move forward. That's not for this, and it's not a condition for consideration for the application. But I won't propose or anything. I'll just leave it there at the moment. I'm in favour at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Gorton.
Thank you, Chair. My first read of this, I thought, well, that's not too bad, and then I saw the lake reps and so on, and I don't think I've ever seen Anglian Water do anything other than not so much comment. But as has been stated here, that's for Anglian Water to sort out their finances. That's not for us to sort of delay something for that. That's down to them to do. It's for them to get, it's a business that they run. So our job is to look at this and see, and then listen to the consultation, the consultants that give us the information, and all of them have stepped back, have concerns, but they've all been mitigated in some fashion or other. Whilst I've still got concerns, as Councillor Corney was saying, that is raising going to be the be all and end all, that's the thing, but it's already been planned in. I think that they've presented something, and I'll wait to see what all the reserve matters as it comes back to planning and how the layout will actually be further. But at this point, I've got no reason not to support this, so I'm happy to propose this one for acceptance.
Thank you very much, and I will pop that down. Councillor Saunderson.
Thank you, Chair. As colleagues have said, this is a reserve matters. Well, there will be reserve matters to this. This is an outline application. So I think some of the questions that we had around this have been dealt with and clarified. And I was equally surprised to see so many comments from Anglian Water. We don't normally get that. But I think we perhaps understand their reasoning. But that's, I don't think, a reason to decline this application. So I'll happily second Councillor Goulson's recommendation of approval.
Oh, thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this particular application? Councillor Brereton.
Thank you, Chair. In my view, this is a messy application, but all the reservations sort of have been covered and mitigated, so I have a mind to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. So I do think, from my point of view, the issues around access and flooding, despite some nervousness from my own point of view, I think our professional experts have, guided us towards supporting this application. I do feel that, the indicative plans look quite uncomfortable, and I look forward to seeing those come back, hopefully in a state that will find it easier to approve. But I can see that there's already a dialogue going on, in the documentation here. So I hope that we'll see something that's, a bit more comfortable when it comes back with those reserve matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to contribute to the discussion? There is nobody else that wishes to contribute, so we will move on to the vote, because we've had Councillor Gorson recommend approval and Councillor Sanderson recommend as seconded that approval. So we will be voting on approving the outline matters for this particular application. So all those that wish to approve, can you please raise your hand?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And any against? And any abstentions? Therefore, this has been approved. We will just adjourn the meeting for a 5-minute rest break. And she will be talking about a planning application in the Stooklys.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, committee. This is agenda item 3C and is on pages 73 to 110 of your reports pack. This is an application to erect 6 residential dwellings and garages following the demolition of 5 barns. In 2022, a very similar permission was approved and is extant, meaning it can still be implemented. This 2022 permission granted 6 dwellings, and this new permission is also for 6 dwellings. The siting, layout and design is very much the same, which can be seen in the upcoming slides, comparing the 2 permissions. The difference being that plots 3 and 4 are now new builds rather than conversions for better sustainability reasons. There are minor increases in height and width and some additional roof lights. Late reps have been provided. There is clarification over paragraph 7.14 of the officer's report. The buildings are not to be retained, they are fully to be replaced. There is also ecology survey clarification. The ecology officer raised concerns over the age of the surveys, However, we do need to note that this varies in different circumstances. In this case, it has been within 18 months to 3 years, and so it's felt that updates are required. A very small population has been found on the site and mitigation has been provided in the previous application. And again, it's important to note that the two applications are very similar, so the mitigation measures would be very similar too. In exceptional cases, government guidance does allow for conditions to be implemented, and we feel that in this specific case, there are those exceptional circumstances. The application is considered on its own merits. There is the previous application that could be implemented. The timeline of the surveys is consideration. The outcome of the previous surveys and the mitigation proposed all allow for this exceptional circumstance, and the agent has agreed for the condition to be imposed. The application has been brought before Planning Committee today as officers have recommended approval, which is contrary to the Parish Council's recommendation for refusal. The parish's objection to the application is detailed in section 5.1 of the officers' report. Their main grounds of objection are that the development is outside of the settlement boundary and not listed as a site for development in the neighbourhood plan. Concerns were also raised with the increase of traffic volume and that the road is not fit for the increased traffic. This slide shows the location of the site on the edge of Great Stuckley. The site currently comprises large farmstead of buildings which can be clearly seen on the aerial image. Open countryside abuts all of the boundaries of the site, although this is subject to change. There is an adopted road leading to the site and unadopted road leading to 2 new dwellings adjacent to the site. In terms of constraints, this is within flood zone 1 and not within a conservation area and has no listed buildings upon the site or directly adjacent to it. This next slide shows the local plan and the neighbourhood plan policies, and the site is circled in yellow. The dotted purple line is the settlement boundary and the dotted red line is the protected settlement break. The site lies outside of these, but can be clearly seen that the site is enveloped on most sides by development, potentially as a large allocated mixed-use site. Although outside the settlement boundary, the proposals comply with local and national policy. This next slide shows the proposed site plan. Here the development is spread across the site in largely the same area as the existing barns and protects the ponds to the rear of the site whilst being smaller footprints than some of the existing barns. This slide shows the difference between the approved 2022 permission and the current proposal before committee today. If I put those circles on, you can see there the difference is being highlighted by the 2 yellow circles. This is the 2 parts of the development that are now proposed to be new build rather than conversion. The rest of the site is very similar in layout and design. This slide in front of you here, again, if I highlight the key areas, you can see that there is a slight increase in height and additional heritage roof lights proposed. The next slide also shows a comparison. This is in particular to plot 3. So this is rather than a conversion, it is to be a rebuild. The close-up on the left of the screen shows the dotted line of the original height against the proposed and the 2 additional roof lights. So you can see a very minimal impact there. Plot 4 comparison, again, rather than conversion, this is the rebuild. And you can see here that there is a modest increase in width and height. Officers acknowledge representations made in regard to the design and character of the area. However, the principle is established in the extant permission that can still be implemented today. This next slide shows the parking bays. Concerns were raised by residents and the Parish Council in regard to highway safety and traffic increases. Again, the permission does not increase the volume of traffic from already approved permission, which was for the exact same number of dwellings, 6 dwellings in total. No objections have been raised from the Highways officer. Highways improvements have been provided in regard to passing bays. There is a turning head within the site so that vehicles will exit in a forward motion. also protecting highway safety. And the works have been ensured that they're within the public highway, so implementable with the highways agreement. Here are some images of where the passing bays are. During this application, amended plans were received for the passing bays to ensure that they didn't impact on neighbouring residential properties or culverted areas and were within the highway. So this is actually a slight betterment on the previous application. Here you can see photos of the site looking into the access. You can see the existing barns at the entrance to the site. On the next one, in image D, you can see the two replacement buildings, dwellings that have already been approved down the unadopted access road and the largest barn on the site. And this next one shows the barns to the rear of the site. Again, quite large barns within the farmstead. The offer's recommendation is for approval, subject to conditions outlined in section 8 of the report. In summary, the proposal complies with policy and principle, offers an enhancement of the immediate setting, would only be slightly different in scale and appearance than already approved scheme. Plots 3 and 4 would be replacement dwellings rather than conversions and are to be proposed to be in materials used from the site and would offer better sustainability as new builds and would not cause significant harm to highway safety or traffic, being the same quantum in principle as the existing scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that report. We will move on to our speakers for this particular application. We have two. Our first speaker is Eleanor Speed, and I believe she is on Zoom. So, Eleanor, welcome. You have 3 minutes in which to address the committee. So when you are ready, you're welcome to start.
Traffic already, which is caused by the farm at the end of near Grange Farm. We have lots of lorries, and as you probably are aware, we've already had quite a few buildings built down our lane in the last couple of years, which have caused a considerable amount of large vehicles and lorries, which have caused a lot of disruption to our road, and they've damaged our road incredibly, which I tend to report this many times to highways and they've done nothing about it. I think, as you can see from the photos that you put up there, our road, our single track lane, was never built to have all of these houses down here. It's in a terrible condition. We have potholes the size of craters. You know, this is a residential area that it just can't cope with this amount of the volume that we're getting. So to have this development would cause a further increase of traffic and damage. We're in a beautiful rural location, which this development would, again, there's habitats there for animals which would be disturbed. And my main concern is I spoke to the surveyor who was out on our street looking at the passing bays, who assured me that the site wasn't in any way suitable for passing bays because where they've looked to put the passing bays, which are to the left side mainly of the road as you're approaching up towards the development, there are lots of utility cables, drains that run along there, and I don't suppose has that been considered, because we can't have the road dug up again and the verges dug up again to have these utilities moved just for the sake of 6 houses. Sorry, I'm just looking through my list of things. We're a nice quiet rural street. As I said, this would cause a lot of disruption with noise, pollution to the residents, and just mainly our main concern is that this is a lovely small residential road, and we just don't want any more traffic and congestion to come down here. It's damaging enough as it is to our environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eleanor Speed. We will just find out if there are any questions of clarification for this particular speaker. Are there any questions for this particular speaker? No, there is a question for you. Councillor Clark.
Yes. Can I ask if it's a private road, please?
A private road? I would say no, it isn't a private road. But it's got, we've got a very small amount of residents that live down here. Then there's a farm at the end of the road, and that's it.
Can I come back?
Yes, you may.
It's either private or it's adopted. I'm sorry.
Well, can I just interrupt there? I'm not sure it's for the speaker to say whether it is or not. She can't give her opinion, so
Yeah, we can pick that up with our planners. Are there any other questions? There are no other questions, so thank you very much for speaking with us this evening. We will move on to our next speaker, who is Adrian Bassetel, who is the agent for this particular application.
Second.
Welcome. And you have 3 minutes in which to address the committee.
Good evening, Chair, members and officers. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to speak. The officers taking a lot of what I was going to say by explaining the development to you, so I won't repeat that. Primarily, the application before members this evening due to Stupey Parish Council objection. As the officers mentioned, it's due to the site being outside the settlement boundary, the concerns regarding the increased volume, and the site's not listed for development in the Stupey neighbourhood plan. Notwithstanding the fact that the redevelopment of the site accords with planning policy for the reasons comprehensively outlined in the officers' report to committee, it's considered that the refusal of planning permission on these grounds would, on this occasion, be wholly unsubstantiated and unreasonable, as the site already benefits from extant planning permission for the creation of 6 dwellings. Permission was granted in 2022 for the erection of 4 new build dwellings and the conversion of 2 barns to provide for 2 further dwellings on the site. All conditions pertinent to this consent were approved on the 2nd of January this year, and as such, the currently approved development for 6 dwellings on the site could be commenced tomorrow without further consultation with anyone. Everything has been agreed, and that is the fallback position which will be enacted if permission is refused and any subsequent appeal dismissed. So this development will come forward for 6 houses. The application before members does not increase the number of dwellings, rather it simply seeks to rebuild rather than convert the existing barns on plots 3 and 4. The urban design officer fully supports the proposal. The conservation officer confirms that the replacement of the barns are designed to reflect the architectural and historic rural nature of the existing barns, and the new build, as opposed to conversion, will enable sustainable energy saving systems to be embedded within the fabric of the buildings. The conservation officer concludes that the barns have limited value, they are in poor condition, and they are not heritage assets. Thus, on balance, it was unreasonable to refuse planning permission in this instance. They are the words of the conservation officer, not mine. Just moving on to the comments raised by the objector speaking. It is an adopted highway. I can confirm that because we've been in detailed consultation with Highways regarding the provision of passing bays, which will actually be provided in this instance for the benefit of all residents. Highways have recommended approval. They've confirmed that actually the development will bring about fewer larger vehicles, which could otherwise be associated with this livestock storage. And on the whole, the mitigation in terms of widening of the access with passing bays more than outweighs any increase in vehicle activity. Again, notwithstanding the fact that in considering this application, consent already exists for 6 dwellings, so there are no grounds for refusal or on the basis of any of the points raised. I sympathise with the resident, and as it's an adopted road, then local highways should be made to make good any potholes and so forth, and any damage to the verge caused by construction vehicles. They are liable for that, is my understanding. That again can be enforced. I would conclude by respectfully asking members to resolve to approve the application in accordance with their officer's advice, and I will gladly assist by providing any answers to any questions or requested points of clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So are there any questions of clarification for this particular speaker? There are no... sorry, I'm afraid it's only committee members that are allowed to ask questions. Thank you very much for speaking with us this evening and for clarifying about the road as well. Thank you. So we will move on to questions of clarification for our planning officer. Councillor Sanderson.
So really just a question on 7.8, and I'm not sure if this development would be seal chargeable, but it says, as Hannah highlighted in her presentation, in accordance with the Stookley's neighbourhood plan, the site is located outside the settlement boundary of Great Stookley. So if it was seal chargeable, would the parish get a meaningful proportion? It would seem that would not be the case if it's outside the neighbourhood plan area.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, the SIL bills are obviously raised at the time at which the development takes place. So it will be at the time the development takes place. It doesn't stop the parish council getting their meaningful proportion at that time. However, just for clarification, SIL in itself is not a material consideration to the application before you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Dew.
Yeah, just one I really know the answer, but just for the panel, really. This one has already got an extant planning permission. Am I right in saying that in terms of numbers, access, that type of thing, we've really got to look at what's different between the two, not the whole project, because they could build what's there tomorrow. So really what we're looking at is the alteration to those two units substantially different that we should reconsider it, or are we saying it's minor and therefore is acceptable? If you could just lead us on that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, there is a 2022 permission that is implementable today. So we do have to consider what the difference is between the two, and is that a greater harm to warrant refusal? It is for 6 dwellings, and you can see from the plans it is minor differences in size and scale, but it is replacement dwellings rather than conversion for the 2 plots 3 and 4 it is.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just leading on for Councillor Dew's question around differences between this and the previous application that's been accepted. Just looking at the plans, the only thing that kind of gave me a little bit of concern, just as vehicles come round the side of plot 3, actually, is it possible to share that drawing with the committee? So I'll carry on talking, but basically there's a single lane track that comes around the corner of, I think, plot 3. And I just wonder whether there's a bit of a blind spot. So essentially the question to officers is that visibility display changed at all in this application compared to the previous one? And apologies, if I was a bit more organised, I could have answered my own question, but... So yeah, on the, that's...
So you can see the comparison there of the 2022 and the 2024. The access visibility is all exactly the same. The turning within the site is the same. You can see, if I can just go back there and take those circles off, you can see that the 2 plots that are changing, they're not impacting on car parking, garaging, accesses in any way. Just to highlight them again.
Thank you. And actually I meant to say that the yellow circles are extremely welcome, so thanks for that as well.
Are there any other questions of clarification for our planning officer? If there are no other questions of clarification, we'll move on to our discussion. Who would like to start our discussion for us? Councillor Corney, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I think actually I'm going to pull Hannah up on this a little bit. I think because there is a big change in this, and I think that's the fact that other than the heights and the extra roof lights, I think building a new home as opposed to converting a barn, I think actually what's built is probably going to be a lot more efficient and probably a better home than the conversion. And I'm a fan of conversions as well, but I think I have sympathy for the resident, but as we've heard, this can be built tomorrow. It's just the differences we're talking about, and I think these differences, there's nothing there that we can refuse. So I'm sort of, I'll go straight and propose this if need be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll accept that proposal. Councillor Dew.
Likewise, I tend to agree with that. I seem to recall when we first had these conversions through, we had some quite unacceptable properties being brought forward for conversion. I think when we've got ones that are just not capable of being done, it makes sense to bring them back. And as it's, my colleagues just said, it brings back a better standard of building and whatever going forward. So I think it's the right way to do it. I think the biggest issue we've got on here is whether we like it or not, there is a planning permission that is extant that could be built tomorrow, which other than these minor details is exactly the same as we've got. There is nothing we can do about the passing bays, the traffic in and out, etc., etc. They were all agreed when the last planning permission was agreed. So I think we got to look at the differences, and I'm quite happy to bring a seconder to that and move things on. I think there's very little to say on it other than that. Thank you.
Okay, just to confirm, Councillor Corney and Councillor Dew, that this is approval including the condition that was put into the late reps.
Refresh us on that and then we'll agree.
Shall I give a point of clarification?
Yes, please.
So in the late reps, we've added an additional condition for updated surveys. Although they could implement the permission now, we just want to have those to make sure that everything's okay on site.
Fantastic, thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to contribute to this particular discussion? There's no one else, so we will move on to the vote. We've had a proposal from Councillor Corney for approval, and which has been seconded by Councillor Dew. So therefore, all those that are in favour of approval, can you please raise your hand?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Any against? Any abstentions? Therefore, that has been approved. We will move on to item 3D on the agenda. And item 3D on the agenda will be presented to us by our planning officer, Lucy Bateman, who will be presenting a variation of condition 21 to the Rowley Arts Centre that's in St Neots.
Thank you, Chair. This application is referred to committee in accordance with the scheme of delegation, as the officer's recommendation of approval is contrary to that of St Neots Town Council. The application is to vary condition 21 opening hours on a previous permission to allow 24-hour use of units 2 and 3 as a gym. So the application site comprises 2 vacant former restaurant units in the Rowley Arts Centre in St Neots. Planning permission was granted for the scheme in January 2012, redeveloping a former fire station site as a cinema along with 4 restaurant buildings, 3 flats, car parking, a public plaza and associated facilities. So this is the original location plan with the red line outlining the site. We have here the approved details plan on that 2012 permission, showing units 2 and 3 Condition 21 of this planning permission states that the opening hours for the restaurants approved shall be limited to 9 a.m. to midnight in the interests of residential amenity. Members should note that the applicant currently operates the gym at Unit 4 of the centre. Just down here, see my cursor, which is open 24 hours. The applicant is now looking to relocate and expand the facility to the larger former restaurant premises at Units 2 and 3, and therefore seeks to vary Condition 21 to allow similar 24-hour opening in the new unit. To clarify, changes to the use class order in 2020 moved restaurants and gyms into the same use class, Class E. So the use of the unit as a gym does not require planning permission. This section 73 deals only with the opening times. The Town Council have raised an objection to the proposed 24-hour use on the grounds of noise and disturbance. These concerns are not shared by the Environmental Health Officer, who has raised no objection. It's considered that there's sufficient separation to nearby residential properties in Cambridge Court to the south, which are actually closer to Unit 4, the current premises, than Unit 2 and 3. And then the properties on East Street to the north, there's sufficient separation distance to those properties. Given that the existing 24-hour gym on site would simply be relocating into adjacent vacant units, it's not considered that there would be significant detrimental impact on surrounding neighbour amenity. Just quickly show you the proposed floor plans that were submitted with this application, showing the proposed layout of Units 2 and 3, and the first floor plan. And then site photo, so you can see the existing Unit 4 used as a gym. And we have here Units 2 and 3. And then this photo shows the relationship with those properties on East Street to the north of the site. So the recommendation is for approval. It's recommended that Condition 21's wording relating to the opening times of the restaurant units be reworded to refer only to the restaurant at Unit 1. This is to reflect the 24-hour use sought at Units 2 and 3, and that Unit 4 is no longer in lawful use as a restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. We will move on to our speaker. We have the applicant, Alec Lowndes. So welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening, and you have 3 minutes in which to address the committee. And when you're ready, if you press the middle button.
Good to go. Great. Firstly, thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak regarding this application. I'm the owner and director of Gains Fitness and Strength, which is operated at its current site just 20 feet away from the proposed location since December 2017. Over the past 7 years, we've operated as a 24-hour gym without a single complaint from local residents or neighbouring businesses. This demonstrates our ability to manage a 24-hour operation responsibly and with minimal impact on the surrounding area. The proposed move to Units 2 and 3 represents an opportunity to expand our services and further support the fitness needs in the local community. However, maintaining our current 24-hour model is essential to ensuring the smooth and effective operation of the gym. Operating as a 24-hour gym significantly reduces congestion and disruption. Unlike gyms that close at 9 or 10 p.m., which often experience a surge of members leaving just before closing time, 24-hour facilities spread usage out throughout the day and night. This prevents large peaks of traffic and activity, which can otherwise create a nuisance. It's also important to note that our gym will continue to be staffed until 8 p.m., after which we turn the music down to ensure minimal noise levels. Our existing protocols, which have proven effective over the years, will remain in place. We're committed to being good neighbours and taking every precaution to ensure our operations do not negatively impact the surrounding area. In addition to all the measures we have in place in Unit 4, at the new site, we'll also have a glass lobby, which will serve as a barrier to limit any noise coming out of the gym when people leave and arrive. The relocation of units two and 3, will not only provide better facilities for our members, but also revitalize units that have been vacant for 3 years. Approving this application supports local business growth, meets the community's fitness needs, and ensures that the site is put to productive use. In closing, I respectfully request the committee approve this application. I believe our track record and the measures we have in place demonstrate our ability to operate responsibly, ensuring no adverse impact on the local community. Thanks again for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of clarification for our speaker this evening? There are. Councillor Goulson.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question. There's only one point that's been raised on any consultation letters, and that was about the beep. That's as people went in and out the entrance door. That's only at Unit 4. Is there a beep on the 2 and 3?
There is no beep at Unit 4. The beep, I saw the letter as well. The beep is actually internal, so it can't be heard from outside. It's literally at the desk.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No other questions. So thank you very much for addressing us this evening.
Thank you.
We will move on to questions of clarification. For our planning officers, are there any questions of clarification for our planning officer? Councillor Corney.
Thanks, Chair. Just all it is really is once we put, if we agree tonight to change the hours, that's on there, isn't it, for moving forwards? Is should they move on to bigger premises somewhere else later date? Is there any way we condition that we revert back to? I don't want to muddy the waters too much, but just in case it changes again, we're stuck with it. That's one. Thank you.
For you, Chair. So I think in terms of this, environmental health would have looked at the range of uses that could have gone in there. So it's not just the business that currently in Unit 4 and is looking to expand. It's whatever use could come under that umbrella. And environmental health have raised no concern with that. So as long as it's within that lawful use, so there's a range of uses there, environmental health have considered and said it's acceptable. So I don't think there's enough grounds to do like a personal consent in this case, and it's not something environmental health have sought. So we'd have to look at the reasoning for that. But yeah, in terms of that, they're the main consulting in regards to noise, which obviously this is the most sensitive part given the opening hours.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions of clarification? Councillor Goulson.
Yeah, just on similar lines, and I know it's not necessarily pertinent to this, but so Unit 4, if they're moving out of Unit 4, at the moment they've got 24-hour opening and so on. So does that stand with that unit until someone else takes on and their business is then brought forward to either planning or otherwise?
So yeah, in terms of Unit 4, it's a separate planning permission. So I think what we're looking at here, Units 2 and 3, separate, so separating them out. But Unit 4 has a change of use. A change of use was granted to entertainment and leisure D2 class for 24-hour health and fitness club. So in terms of Unit 4, what you're expecting there is another gym. If they wanted to do a change of use, they'd come back to us for it. So I think in terms of, I understand why you're considering the business that's in there, and in terms of its kind of operation, how effective that's been with limited complaints, as we've heard. What you're considering here is the open hours for any type of use, and Environmental Health confirmed they have no objections to that. So I wouldn't look at it as a personal consent. It's those uses, unrestricted, opening hours.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions of clarification? There are no other questions of clarification, so we will move on to the discussion. Councillor Dew, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I have a fundamental objection to 24-hour gyms on the basis my physiotherapist said I should go to the gym 3 times a week. At the moment, I can look at my watch and go, oh, it's 8:30, I've missed it again. I will have no excuse. But getting on to the serious side of this, I think, you know, the units there are coming forward and need to be occupied. It's a legal use. It's a good use. The applicant's already on site and have shown they're good neighbours and have caused no problems or no complaints. I think the model of, you know, of gyms now is, you know, my joke aside, is 24-hour. I've noticed them, you know, not just locally, but throughout the country now, springing up. I initially had great reservations about, you know, the fact they were not necessarily manned throughout, but I've heard of no problems anywhere that come from that. So I think, you know, from our point of view, I can see no reasons at all why we'd want to refuse this. So if you want me to, I'll move a recommendation for approval straight away. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll accept that. Anybody else that wants to contribute to the discussion? Councillor Corney.
I can't add anything else other than what Councillor Dew said, so I'm happy to second it. Give you that.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'll accept that. Is there anyone else that would like to say anything on this particular application? As there is no one else that wants to contribute to that particular discussion, we'll move straight on to the vote. We've had a proposal of approval, which has been seconded by Councillor Corney. So those who are in favour of approval, can you please raise your hand?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Are there any against and any abstentions? Therefore, it has been approved.
Before we move on, can I just raise an old point that's been a chestnut of mine over the years? The reason this is with us tonight, because St Neots Town Council have raised an objection. Can we make it clear to objection? I don't mind personal objectors not turning up. When councils turn up, especially one that have got a neighbourhood plan, I think they've got a duty to at least turn up and explain what they're thinking. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dew. We will move on to item number 4. Item number 4. Item number 4 is our appeal decisions. So we will hear from our planning service manager about the
So there's a few to get through, so I'll try to keep it brief. So the first 3 relate to Bufferload, which is just off the A14 opposite Ellington. You see the first 2 relate to enforcement notices, but I think we should just start with that third one first. If you just read that description of development, they sort of change of use. You can see within that description, they make reference to 2 previous planning permissions, one in 2006 and another in 2019. I think kind of the core issue here is that obviously Bufferload is a large business, is a big employer, it's grown. They came with an application with insufficient information. We refused on those grounds and inspector agreed. The enforcement notices relate to a change of use and the erection of a building in the kind of the northern eastern part of the site. And again, the inspector agreed at both of those. So 6 months to kind of revert those back. I think it's just worth noting, obviously, they will engage with us and discuss what to do in next steps. These decisions came in just after Christmas. So in terms of that, that's ongoing. Right, next one is Sibson cum Stibington, so listed building consent, refused, delegated, split decision in terms of the inspector decided to split the works between internal and external, saying the external ones are acceptable, internal not. So split decision, so half allowed, half dismissed. The next one is land reform of Vicarage Church Lane. That was actually a committee item that I brought about a year or so ago, a year and a half ago. We refused on a number of reasons. The main ones being heritage and tree impact. The inspector accepted additional tree information, and that was around kind of daylight sunlight, future pressure to remove trees. So that overcame that reason and disagreed on the heritage grounds. So that was allowed, one of the backlog applications. The next one in Farset, retrospective application. sorry, I should add that on the previous one, on the previous ones that I just read out, both went for costs and both were refused. So we won that. So yeah, so the Farset one is basically shipping containers in business use in the countryside. Multiple reasons for refusal around kind of location, noise impact, character. Inspector upheld all those reasons, so dismissed. The next one is the Wistow one. So we granted change of use to agricultural land, and they saw a removal of a condition, which was limiting their permitted development rights and conservation impacts. The inspector agreed with us, and the condition remains. So appeal dismissed on that. The Sturcleys one is, you know what? I've just gone blank on that one. Just bear with. Oh, yeah. So it's to do with highway improvement works. So we granted permission for 2 dwellings down there. Highway sought improvement works, but they actually benefited the whole street. It wasn't just fair to then get the 2 dwellings to do that. So obviously that condition has been removed by the inspector. So it's about being appropriate and proportionate to what was approved. And then the last one, in terms of the erection of 3 attached dwellings. So again, that is down to heritage impact. So inspector agreed with us on that one, and that was dismissed. And that's all of them.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say, Councillor G.
Can I just comment on those, especially the Buffalo ones? They've been hanging around for a long while. There's been a huge pressure on this council to allow them regardless. And I'm pleased to see the officers have stuck to their guns on this and they've actually got the right result on it. So that's excellent news. Also, the other thing that was quite good, there was 2 there where the inspector disagreed with our opinions, but actually didn't allow costs, which actually shows he might not have liked the answer we came up with, but it means we used the right process to get there, which is good. So I just think it's a matter of flagging that up. And the last one, I've forgotten what I was going to say, so I'll let you all go home and won't mention it. Thank you.
So thank you very much for your contributions and thank you very much for the reports from our planning officers. So that brings us to the end of our meeting.